It was one of the largest battles the ancient world had ever witnessed. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers clashing on the mighty Yangtze River. A fleet so vast it covered the waters, banners rising like a forest of spears, and the thunder of war drums shaking the earth. Yet in this storm of men and steel, victory did not belong to numbers alone. It was claimed through cunning and courage, through fire and wind, as strategy turned nature itself into a weapon. From this clash, legends were born. Leaders whose brilliance and daring would be remembered not only in China, but across the world, as symbols of how intellect can triumph over might. At the Red Cliffs, the meeting of armies became the making of myth. The year was 208 AD. The mighty Han Dynasty, once the unshakable pillar of China, had fallen into decay. In its place rose warlords, each carving their piece of the empire. None shone brighter or more fearsome than Cao Cao, the ruthless northern warlord who dreamed of uniting all of China under his iron rule. Brilliant, ambitious, and merciless, he had crushed every rival in the north. Now, with hundreds of thousands of soldiers at his back, he turned his eyes south toward the fertile Yangtze River. To seize the south was to seize the empire. Yet two unlikely men stood in his way. One was Sun Quan, the young ruler of Eastern Wu, barely in his 20s, cautious but determined to protect his family's legacy. The other was Liu Bei, a wandering warlord remembered more for his honor and compassion than for any great victory. Compared to Cao Cao's vast host, they were ants before an elephant. Still, destiny had other plans. In the court of Wu, fear filled the air. Advisors urged Sun Quan to surrender. After all, who could resist an army that Cao Cao boasted to be 800,000 strong? Even Liu Bei, retreating south with only a handful of weary soldiers, seemed powerless. Yet amid the whispers of fear, there were still voices of defiance. One belonged to Zhou Yu, Wu's brilliant young commander, whose wit was as sharp as his blade. The other belonged to Zhuge Liang, Liu Bei's famed strategist, known as the Sleeping Dragon. Together they whispered of possibilities, of fire, of wind, and of fate itself bending in favor of the desperate. The storm was gathering. The Yangtze's waters flowed quietly under the winter sky, but soon they would blaze with fire. The fate of empires would be decided not by sheer numbers, but by cunning, courage, and the will to defy the impossible. In the city of Chaisang, the fate of the south trembled on the edge of a blade. Sun Quan, the cautious young ruler of Wu, sat in his hall while his advisors argued fiercely. Some, like the scholar Zhang Zhao, urged surrender. Cao Cao's army is unstoppable, they warned. To resist is to invite ruin. Others reminded him that surrender meant the end of Wu's freedom. The young lord's hand clenched on the armrest of his chair, torn between fear and duty. Then Zhou Yu, Wu's fiery young commander, rose. Calm but burning with conviction, he bowed to Sun Quan. "My lord," he declared, "Cao Cao boasts 800,000 men. But how many are true soldiers? Many are farmers and commoners, forced into service. His men are exhausted from northern campaigns, and his fleet, though vast, is filled with horsemen who know nothing of the river. Numbers alone do not make an invincible army." At his side stood Zhuge Liang, Liu Bei's envoy and legendary strategist, the Sleeping Dragon himself. His voice was soft, but each word struck with weight. "If Wu surrenders, Cao Cao will consume you, and once he does, he will turn against my lord Liu Bei. Neither of us can survive alone, but together perhaps we can burn away this storm." Two voices, one fiery, one calm, united in purpose. Sun Quan's eyes hardened. He stood, drew his sword, and struck the table with its blade. "Enough!" he thundered. "Those who would surrender may leave. As for me, I would rather fight beside heroes than live as Cao Cao's dog." The hall fell silent, then erupted in gasps. The decision was made. An alliance was forged. Fragile, uneasy, but vital. Wu and Shu would stand together against the northern giant. Outnumbered, outmatched, and facing impossible odds, they had chosen defiance. And in that choice, history began to shift. The alliance was fragile, but it had been made. Now all that remained was to face the storm. On the broad waters of the Yangtze River, the mighty waterway of southern China, Cao Cao's massive fleet anchored, stretching as far as the eye could see. Warships lashed together in neat rows, their masts like a forest of spears against the winter sky. From his command tent, Cao Cao, the northern warlord, smiled with confidence. To him, the south was already his prize. But across the river, in the camp of Wu and Shu, two minds were at work. Zhou Yu, Sun Quan's fiery commander, and Zhuge Liang, Liu Bei's calm strategist known as the Sleeping Dragon, sat beneath the flickering light of lanterns. They knew brute strength would never win. To defeat Cao Cao, they would need cunning, patience, and the right moment. Zhou Yu struck the table with his fan. Cao Cao's fleet is powerful, but he has chained his ships together. His men are horsemen, not sailors. They fear the river's sway, so they lock their vessels side by side to keep steady. But in doing so, they have created one giant raft. And rafts burned. Zhuge Liang's eyes glimmered. Yes, fire is our weapon, but fire alone is not enough. And the wind must be with us. In summer, the winds blow from the south. But now, in the dead of winter, the winds blow from the north, directly into our faces. If we strike now, the flames will turn back upon us. Zhou Yu frowned, for he knew the truth of it. To burn Cao Cao's fleet, they would need a miracle. Yet Zhuge Liang spoke softly, with the calm of a man who saw beyond the present. There will come a day soon when the winds change. From east to south, they will shift. If we wait, if we prepare, heaven itself may grant us victory. The young officers of Wu whispered nervously. Could they trust the words of this stranger from Liu Bei's camp? But Zhou Yu's sharp mind weighed the risks and the opportunities. He nodded slowly. Then we will wait. And when the wind turns, we will set the river aflame. And so the plan was laid. In the coming nights, soldiers gathered bundles of reeds and soaked them in oil. Warships were prepared as fire ships, ready to be sent into the enemy's fleet. Men sharpened arrows and whispered prayers into the winter air. On both sides of the river, torches flickered in the darkness. One side believed they were invincible. The other side prepared to gamble everything on a single blaze of fire. The cliffs that overlooked the Yangtze, Chibi, or Red Cliffs, as it would be remembered, waited in silence. The world held its breath. The night was cold on the Yangtze. Cao Cao's fleet, chained together in long rows, loomed across the dark water. To the northern warlord, this formation was strength. It kept the ship steady. It allowed his men to march across the decks as if on solid ground. But to his enemies, it was the key to his downfall. In the camp of the Alliance, the plan was ready. Bundles of reeds, soaked in oil, were tied to the prows of small warships. Pitch and tar coated the decks. Soldiers whispered prayers as they prepared to guide these floating torches straight into the heart of Cao Cao's fleet. Every man knew the risk. The fire ships would be death traps. Those who steered them forward would not return. Yet volunteers came forward without hesitation, their eyes burning brighter than the torches they carried. Then at last the wind shifted. It was subtle at first, a soft breath from the southeast, carrying the smoke of campfires across the river. But for Zhou Yu and his allies, it was the signal they had waited for. The heavens had answered. The order was given. A line of fire ships was released, sails catching the fresh wind. They glided silently at first, like shadows drifting toward the enemy. Then torches were lit, flames racing up masts, crackling across decks. The night exploded with light. The fire ships became infernos, roaring down the river with the wind at their backs. Cao Cao's men shouted in confusion. At first they laughed. Fire ships were no threat, they thought. They would simply push them aside. But when the burning hulks struck their chained vessels, the laughter turned to screams. One ship ignited, then another, then another. The chain formation became a trap, fire spreading from deck to deck faster than men could cut the bonds. Soldiers leapt into the freezing water, only to drown in the black waves. Others burned where they stood, trapped on blazing decks. From the cliffs above Red Cliffs, the Allied army struck. Arrows rained down, fire-tipped and merciless. War drums thundered across the night, drowning the chaos with their relentless beat. On the southern banks, Wu's sailors surged forward in small craft, striking at scattered survivors, while Liu Bei's soldiers clashed with Cao Cao's men on shore. The river was no longer water, it was fire, smoke, and blood. Cao Cao, watching from his command ship, felt the triumph of months shatter in a single hour. His invincible fleet, his claim to the south, was collapsing in a storm of flames. The Battle of Red Cliffs had begun, and the Yangtze itself had turned against him. The river burned through the night. By dawn, the fleet that had once stretched across the Yangtze was nothing but blackened wreckage, charred timbers drifting on the current. What had been Cao Cao's greatest weapon was now his greatest loss. Tens of thousands of soldiers were gone, consumed by fire or drowned in the dark waters. The survivors were shattered, their discipline broken, their spirit crushed. From the banks of the river, the alliance pressed forward. Wu's ships struck like wolves at scattered remnants. Liu Bei's men surged inland, cutting off escape routes. Every hour, Cao Cao's vast army shrank, not through battle alone, but through hunger, disease, and fear. What had begun as an unstoppable force now looked like a beaten mob. Cao Cao himself, the proud northern warlord who had boasted of 800,000 men, now found himself retreating. His confidence was gone. The path home led through the marshes and narrow passes of southern China. Terrain his cavalry feared and his infantry loathed. Rain fell heavy, turning roads into rivers of mud. Horses stumbled, wagons sank, men abandoned weapons just to keep walking. At Hurong Road, a twisting, swampy pass through the hills, the retreat turned into disaster. Exhausted soldiers slipped in the mire, crushed beneath carts, or left behind in the muck. Ambushes by local militias and guerrilla fighters struck from the shadows, each attack bleeding the army further. Men who had once marched proudly under Cao Cao's banners now staggered like ghosts, gaunt and broken. It was no longer a campaign, it was a nightmare. Cao Cao, riding at the head of his battered column, clenched his teeth against despair. He had faced many enemies before, but never had he felt the hand of fate weigh so heavily against him. From the flames of Red Cliffs to the mud of Huarong, the proudest army in China had been reduced to ruins, and the man who dreamed of ruling the empire now fled with what fragments remained, chased by the echoes of fire and the ghosts of the river. When the fires burned out and the smoke drifted away, the world was not the same. On the banks of the Yangtze, charred wreckage still floated, a graveyard of ships and men. The South had survived. More than that, it had triumphed against impossible odds. For Cao Cao, the mighty northern warlord who dreamed of ruling all of China, Red Cliffs was a scar that would never heal. His fleet was gone, his army shattered, his confidence broken. Though he would fight again in the years to come, he would never again march so close to unifying the empire. Red Cliffs had drawn a line across history, and even he could not cross it. For Sun Quan, the young ruler of Wu, the battle secured his place among China's great leaders. He had chosen defiance when surrender seemed the safer path, and his courage preserved the independence of the South. For Liu Bei, the wandering warlord who had once seemed powerless, Red Cliffs gave him a foothold. From that foothold, he would build the foundation of Shu, the kingdom that would carry his name into legend. And for the world, Red Cliffs became a symbol. It was proof that numbers alone do not guarantee victory, that cunning and courage can topple even the greatest of powers. The alliance of Wu and Shu was uneasy, fragile, and destined to fracture in the years ahead. Yet in that single moment, united against the storm, they changed the fate of China forever. The cliffs themselves still stand above the Yangtze, their red faces glowing in the light of dawn. Travelers speak of the wind that whistles through them, carrying echoes of drums, cries of battle, and the crackle of flames. To this day, the name Red Cliffs is remembered not just as a battle, but as a turning point, a place where fire and water, courage and fate join to shape the destiny of empires.